Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Looking back over the last 72 hours here, so most of this weekend, we can kind of pick up on where the heaviest rainfall kind of set up. We were concerned about an area right in through here that could possibly have some flooding rains, and there were some very heavy rains that came through eastern Oklahoma into Arkansas and Missouri over the weekend. We also saw some heavier rain down here in this part of Texas, stretching over into the southeast, and there were some places down here that have been very dry as of late. But this map is going to undergo a lot of change just in the next 7 days alone, especially in parts of the western United States where, due to a deep trough that's developing into the west, we're going to be seeing major snows coming into the mountain chains in the west. And this is also going to signal a pretty big warm-up and dry spell here in the midsection of the country leading up toward the end of this week and Christmas. So from here, let's come over from the last 72 hours to look back at the last 19 or 20 days here. So this would be the month of December. So these are precipitation ranks by climate district, and we kind of continue the same narrative we've had. This pocket of the southern and high plains extending here to parts of this part of Missouri. But even here back over to the Louisiana-Texas border, there's a lot of area in through here that has been quite dry. Same thing for this section of the Mid-Atlantic, getting down into the Carolinas. And so this has been a very dry month for those areas. And due to the way that the onshore winds have come into the northwest, the Columbia Basin getting into this part of the central part of Oregon, it's also been another region that's shown up on the drier side of things so far. And my long-term concern about the drought that we've seen develop here in the southern plains just continues, and that's an area where the soil moisture values there down to 16 inches or 40 centimeters is still quite low. So we can see these drier corridors showing up pretty well right now in the soil moisture values. And the big question we're going to have as we move into the month of December, or through December, but into January, is if we're going to get change out of this. So those are some of the big questions I want to ask, and let's get to them right away at the beginning. So through the next week, the west is really going to be picking up a lot of precipitation. We'll have multiple clippers that run along the U.S.-Canada border, spreading a lot of light snow here from the Canadian Prairie and Northern Plains into the Great Lakes, Eastern Ontario, and Quebec. But a major warm-up is in store for this area throughout this week, and very dry in the lower Mississippi River Valley compared to normal. There's a coastal low here. It's going to go across Florida. It's going to clip parts of the southeast with some heavier rain possibly, but this one's going to likely stay out to shore, maybe only reintroducing some moisture in terms of snowfall into Maine as we watch that one go. But a lot of our major weather events are going to be happening in the western part of the United States, and we need to have a discussion about that particular area. So let's take a look at where we are right now in terms of snowfall compared to the average, and I'm taking the time period to calculate that average from 2008 to 2020. So this is a departure map, and I'll just let you know there are some places in here in the Sierra Nevada that are over 100 inches above the 2008 to 2020 average. And Cascades have really added quite a bit, just north of the Snake River Valley. In fact, much of the west is doing okay, except on the east-facing slopes. So if you come over here to this part of Montana, this part of Wyoming, and certainly here on the front range of the Rocky Mountains, we're in deficit. You can also see that while we've had decent lake effect snow, plus that big system that rolled through here last week, okay, good snow in that area. But we need quite a bit more in Montana, in Montana, but also in the Dakotas. And since we were talking about lake effect, I just want to point out, on the tail ends of Ontario and Erie, Ontario here and Erie there, we're still waiting for it. Appalachian Mountains still in a bit of a deficit. And the big reason for this, and we're going to cover this, of course, in more detail later, but it's been very mild. So I'll come back to that map in just a few seconds. That's the December kind of month-to-date precipitation. Now, in the west, we have seen a remarkable change compared to the last few years. And take a look at these next couple of graphics. Let's blow that up so you can see it. This is for the Northern Sierra precipitation, 8-station precipitation index. And you can see the shading telling you what average would be. Now, we're currently at 23 inches. And I just want to point something out. That was more than we had in all of 2020 to 2021, that time period. So we're way above that. In fact, we're kind of matching the pace of the 82-83 season and the 16-17 season. So being at 158% of normal in the Northern Sierra, plus what you're about to see that the models are forecasting to come there, this is really an aggressive start to the season. And I want to make a point here, not well forecast. La Niñas typically don't do this. They typically have a weak subtropical jet. Why we're seeing this is because, I'll show you in a few moments, how deep the cold air has been in the west, and it's produced some deep troughs, and they're getting there. How about sliding a little farther south into the San Joaquin precipitation regions? That's right here in California. Again, we're at 13.2. We finished last year at 18.8. So we're already just 5 inches away from where we finished last year. So to be above average is fantastic. And our last basin farther to the south is the Tulare Basin. And it's still sitting right on the average, about 99% of average. But just to make another point, it's at 6.7 inches. We finished last year, if you take a look at this, it's this line right here at 9.9. So this is all very, very good news for the West. And I'll show you what's been going on here. Because up to this point in the month, we have pushed a ridge. We've seen a ridge setting up here over the Aleutian Islands. And there's actually been troughing that's been in and around Hawaii. And that's what brought on that southerly flow that really hammered Hawaii earlier in the month. But the flow's come over the top, and it's been able to dip down and come into California and run up over a ridge that's been here. So it's this ridge that's kept things mild and then very dry in the high plains, dry over the mid-Atlantic. Systems kind of run up over the edge of that ridge. Had we put a big high-pressure cell here, this pattern would have been much more amplified, but it's not. So we've seen a lot of these systems run along the U.S.-Canada border. That's been our setup. Now, what are we going to see later on this week? Well, let me just show you Christmas Eve. See that split? Comes together in the west. This is going to be a big snow event for the west, pushing right up to the west-facing slopes of the Rockies here in the Central Rockies. But see this large ridge here? That's all curling around that high-pressure cell right here over Mexico. And this is going to lead to a big warm-up here toward, well, on Christmas Eve in the midsection of the United States. In fact, I'll just show it to you real quick. These are the max temperatures on Friday compared to average. Some places, 25 to 35 degrees above normal. Now, the temperature pattern is going to swing a lot. It's going to be windy. We're going to see this moving through very quickly. And no, I'm not referencing like winds we saw back on the 15th. I'm just saying normal, winter winds coming through, shifting these temperatures around quite a bit. But I'll come back to that in a few moments. What I want to get to is I want to have a discussion about this, all right? Now, you remember from the video on Thursday, we discussed what's going on with the MJO. I think we need to have a revisit of that, talk about La Nina, and put some sense to the brand new long-range forecast for the month of January. Because this area right in through here, all right, is a large area of subsidence in the atmosphere. That's what these red colors represent. And it's right over phase 3 of the MJO. Now, if La Nina were still strong and kicking, we would not see for the next 15 days, so here's today getting all the way through the 4th of January, we would not see these reds in place here. So this means that the effect of the La Nina in the Central Pacific Ocean is waning. It's backing off. It's shifting around a bit. And what's going on here is we're getting these stronger easterlies all the way through the next 15 days showing up in the Indian Ocean. Do you see the warmer colors here? That means the winds are going that way. And in this area, there's subsidence. Because if there's divergence in the flow here, it's got to go down. The air has to go down. And that is ultimately what's controlling the interplay between the La Nina and the MJO. So take a look. Remember, this is Nino region 3.4 out here, and this is what we call Nino region 1 plus 2. We're going to talk about both. Before I do that, though, we still have a La Nina signature in the ocean temperatures. But the point I'm trying to make is that the trade winds, which ultimately govern the strength of the La Nina, are changing a lot. And we've been talking about that now for the last 15 days. One of the mainstays in this forecast, though, is what you've got here. And that cold water will help the jet stream dip south, especially in the near term. But how is the interplay between what's going on in the tropics and this feature right here, this cold water, going to be working together? I want to answer that question. So let's take a quick look at that. At the ocean temperatures. So again, a great website, Tropical Tidbits. If you land on the page, it looks like this. Come over to Analysis Tools, Ocean Analysis, and it shows up just like that. Now I'm going to click on that Nino region 3.4, and you can see it with me. Throughout November, pretty steady ocean temperatures, and you see here at the very end, it's starting to just warm up a little bit. Now, it's still going to be cold in this area compared to average for a while, but I'm trying to find that transition. When does it begin to peak? And I think we're there. Let's look at another region, 1 plus 2. That's right over by South America. Now, in this particular case, the ocean temperatures have been steadily dropping for a while, but I think they're bottoming out right now. I think we've now reached the coldest we're going to see, about 2 degrees Celsius below normal, and this is going to just stay here for a while and start to possibly rebound with time. Now, all of this is very typical of La Nina at this time of year, and we just have to ask ourselves, what's the ramification of it? Well, the European model and other models have said that all that subsidence in phase 3 makes the MJO look like it's in phase 7. Remember us talking about that on Thursday, right? So the subsidence in phase 3 on the opposite side of the diagram looks like a lot of rising motion. But I don't think it's truly there. And what I mean by that is we shouldn't expect a full-on jet stream pattern to mimic phase 7. I'm going to show you what that would look like, because this is just the next 15 days, or excuse me, next 15 days. This is the next 30. And you notice how the MJO, according to the European, just doesn't move. It just stays there. It's fixed in phase 7. And I, again, believe this is due to subsidence over the Indian Ocean. I also think that the model is stuck on persistence. In other words, it's got into this pattern and it's leaving the pattern there. So here's what we're going to do. We revisit those same maps. Phase 7 of the MJO in December tends to favor some sort of ridging here. Where is it right now? Well, it's actually over Mexico. But we've had extended, at times in December, extended pieces of the jet stream that have then dipped south of that cold water here and come into the west coast. We're on for that. But let's just, again, do what we did on Thursday and say, what if the MJO does really stay in phase 7 or has an appearance of phase 7? Because I think the models are going to say that it is. This is what you end up getting. Larger ridge that parks itself south of Alaska, which means the flow is going to be highly amplified here and then dive down like that. Now the consequences of this: much more active storm track in the Mid-South, much more active storm track Tennessee and Ohio River Valley, better chances of precip up the East Coast, and that cold air that's been in Canada, it will come into the Midwest. It'll come into the plains. It'll get into the east. This also pushes up against the mountains in the west from the east. So instead of having that strong onshore flow like this, you'll see that British Columbia is going to favor drier conditions. Maybe even parts of the west coast could see drier conditions. I'm saying drier compared to now. So I want to show you the brand new long-range updates, and we're going to match this up with some other data too. January. This is the month of January. See how the models have kind of bit into that ridge developing here, the drier conditions? If there's deeper troughs that come cutting into the west, that's why you get the above average precipitation in here. Okay? And if those troughs eject, it's the Tennessee and Ohio Valley in which they do that, dragging fronts through the south, over toward the east. In between where you see white, there's cold air coming down here and near normal precipitation. I don't see it letting go of having all those clippers roll through, which means I don't, unlike a year ago, forecast a snow drought in this area. But I need to see this fill in with greens. I want to see those above average precipitation amounts coming in here. And if the jet stream comes in like this, that's not the right configuration to draw that moisture from the Gulf back into Texas to produce precipitation farther to the west. And that is something I wish I could see a different pattern evolve to correct. There's two other complicating factors. Well, one other complicating factor, and then I want to give you another forecast. I am not an expert in the polar vortex. I've studied it, but do not look to me to be the expert. Here's what I know about it in very simple terms. If the polar vortex, in other words, the winds in the stratosphere where the pressure is about 10 millibars, if they're strong, the polar vortex is strong, keeps a tight grip on the cold air and keeps it over the Arctic. And we've got that right now. This is a very, concentric, very circular view of the polar vortex. Strength of it, it's still above, the climatological average. See that line right there? That's the current strength. So if we see it staying here into the foreseeable future, that means that a polar vortex disruption right now, such that it connects with the troposphere and aligns with the tropospheric vortex, tropospheric polar vortex, then getting the brutally colder outbreaks to finish up this month are not necessarily in the works. And then I say, but, because I'm noticing this. Now this is from the European model. So the polar vortex today is here, spinning around, all right? Watch what happens in the forecast, though. Moving through the solstice, which is tomorrow, okay, then getting out here to December 23rd, 24th, 25th. Do you start to see where the anomalies are showing up by the time we finish the month of December? They're right in through this area. Now, if that's where our lowest height anomalies are, I'm way up in the stratosphere. You also remember that that's where we're seeing the troughs develop. There seems to be some alignment. And my concern is, what does that do to the temperature pattern? The European model says that the month of January lets that cold air out. See it? Comes here across the northern plains, into the Midwest, into the Northeast, and it just sets up shop over the West. Whereas they're going to be mild, maybe more persistent mild, could be along the Gulf Coast compared to average. So that's the one model forecast. Here's the other component to it, the CFSv2. January 3rd to January 9th. See how the cold air is starting to advance, make a move? January 10th through the 16th, now it's fully occupying the north interior of the United States. And if there's mild air, it's staying pretty far to the south overall. So I have to look at that and say there's decent model agreement here through much of January between the CFSv2 and the European model. I think that the European model's forecasted pattern, when you look at a 30-day window, makes a lot of sense to me based on the MJO, the weakening La Nina, possibly interaction with the polar stratospheric and polar tropospheric vortexes. So I know we spent a lot of extra time here in the long range, but these are the things I'm watching. Let's get into a short range forecast. Double model, dual model comparison here. GFS on the left, European on the right. As we get things going here on Monday night, we got this we have a coastal low here that's going to be moving toward Florida. See that? And so into the day on Tuesday and Wednesday, this one is going to be spreading some potentially heavier rains down here in parts of Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and the heaviest rains into Florida. It's in both models. There's a weak little clipper setting up on Tuesday morning, coming through the Red River Valley of the North, spreading some light snow. That one gets into the Great Lakes. It's in both models, very well captured here. And then that one kind of spreads out into this part of Ontario and Quebec. Now, before I talk about the next low sinking down here, it's in both models along the coast of British Columbia, just note that this coastal low could get pretty close to the northeast and spread heavy snows into the interior. It appears the interior parts of Maine and Vermont, New Hampshire, I think has the best chance of this. So see, and then it gets into the Canadian Maritimes. Now, while that's going on, another weak little clipper runs through the Canadian Prairie, northern plains of the United States. But at this point, the overall flow is a deep trough here. So you're just going to see flow coming into the west. So as you pull it through here, systems just keep hitting the west. I just want to show you something. Let me go back. The night of the 23rd and the 24th, possibly some heavy snow in the Rockies here, west-facing slopes, while a clipper runs right here over Lake Winnipeg. That would be early morning on Christmas Eve. Now, as we play this through that time period, what we see is there's a low here and a front that dips on the back side. There will be moisture out ahead of it, and that is going to bring in some very mild air, but a quick turnaround on the temperatures behind it. So remember me showing you the temperatures for Christmas Eve? I told you they were in flux. This front's going to sweep through. It's going to bring in some snow on the northern side of it here as well. And then as we play this through into early Christmas morning, so this would be 6 a.m. on the 25th, getting here into midday, high pressure sets up in the midsection of the country. The west is just, the flow is just coming in every direction from the west. And the system that rolled through the Great Lakes here is now sitting over parts of New England. All right. But big section of the country is going to have a drier Christmas day, but it is not the west. And then as going into this weekend, you see that continues. Now, the models begin to separate in their forecast once we get out here to about Sunday, the 26th. And what you notice here is that the European does bring in a larger area here on Sunday of some snow and this kind of elongated front that'll be in that area. But at this point, it's there in the GFS just later. See it? That's on the 27th. It doesn't matter. For the west, the next system rolls in, and we're just going to keep that area active going into week 2 as well. Okay, multi-model analysis. Let's distill it down to a couple of maps. Total precipitation from now through the next 7 days. So again, our story, there is the low coming out of the Gulf, runs up here, snow into Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. Clipper System 1, Clipper System 2, we're going to have a couple of them come through, and this is mostly going to be snow. Now, in the western part of the United States here, looking at these precipitation totals, this is all going to be elevation dependent, and we could get some very heavy precip in coastal California, into the Sacramento Valley. And then the liquid equivalent for the snow here in the mountains is up here in the 8, 9, 10-inch range. Now, to show you that snow, for those that ask me what's the probability of a white Christmas, for adding new snow, this is the chance between now and midnight on the 26th of adding another inch of snow. All right. From there, let's go look at the chance of adding 3 inches. Now you can see it's mostly in the Canadian Prairie, coming through the Great Lakes into the northeast. And what's the chances of 6? So that's the chance of getting 6 more inches of snow between now and then. But I can't really use these maps for the west. We have to go look at the actual amounts in the west. And just look at this. As we play forward with today's 12Z European, let's go through the day on Friday and we'll park this right at the end of the weekend. How about Sunday evening? At that point, okay, we've seen clippers rolling through, heavier snow in Ontario and Quebec. It's heavy snow here in this part of, like I said, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. But into the Central Rockies, we're talking maybe 20 inches of snow here, and then 2 to 5 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevada. Same thing for the Cascades. And remember, it doesn't stop. It just keeps piling up there. So even taking you all the way to the day 10 forecast, look at these amounts. They're off my color bar, possibly another 6 feet of snow in some places in the west. Now, where it goes from there, take a look at this trough. Ready? This is now getting into December 30th. This is now January 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Now, did you see the shift? This ridge was here, and it's moved. This trough has come farther downstream. Now, we're looking at an ensemble average, but that's the colder air getting let out. That's the kind of shrinking of the ridge. And the effect of this is to give us a much more active storm track, like we saw at the beginning. So with the ridge moving, drier here, but wetter throughout the mountains. Active Ohio and Tennessee Valley storm track and clipper systems. This is a very active pattern we're looking at the end of the month. From there, let's talk temperatures and we'll wrap this one up. What you've got here is the month-to-date temperature pattern. And these ranks by climate district really show us how very mild it's been in the southern part of the United States. In fact, the whole of the U.S. for the most part. Where we're going this week as we wrap up this video, we've already seen Monday's highs. There's Tuesday's high temperatures going into Wednesday and then Thursday. And what your eye is probably drawn to is the large area here in the midsection of the country warming under that ridge. From Thursday into Friday, Christmas Eve, look at the cold air already on tap here. But broad warm sector opens up yet again. And then this is going to be Saturday's high temperatures compared to average. And then watch as we go into Sunday. Look at that cold air invading here. Parts of Montana, -3 for a high. So the temperature pattern is very split across the United States. In my last 2 graphics, the new 5 to 10 day, this is up to 30 degrees colder than average. This is up to 20 degrees above average. And that's why it's going to run right between the two and be very active in that area. Sorry for the sound effect there. But we do notice that as we finish this month and begin 2022, that cold air has a better chance of getting let out at times here across the northern tier of the U.S., the Midwest, and into the Northeast. So we'll watch it. I'll give you one last video for 2021 on Thursday. And with that, we'll go and wrap this one up. Appreciate your attention. Thank you.